Okay, welcome to Rugby Borough Council's Audit and Ethics Committee. I'm Paul Dudfield and I'm the chair of this committee. Before we begin the meeting, there are just a couple of administrative items to cover. Firstly, the meeting is being web streamed to the public via the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, any member who wishes to talk will need to press the button push to talk on the microphone in front of them, which will then cause the camera above to pan to their face while they're speaking. I'm also required to read out the fire notice as follows. There is no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, therefore, please could I ask that you make your way down the main staircase out of the main doors of the town hall and congregate at the entrance to Caldecott Park. An officer of the council will then give instructions when it is safe to re-enter the building. Okay, thank you. So let's move on to the agenda then. Are you happy to that I signed the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of March 21? Craig and John, I think it was just us three as members, wasn't it? Okay, thank you. Okay, item 2 on the agenda, apologies. Veronica, do we have any apologies this evening?
One apology for tonight from After Sohal, Grant Thornton.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 3, declarations of interests. So do members have any declarations to make in respect of item A on our agenda, non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors? Okay, thank you. Item B, pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors? Thank you. And item C, notice under section 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 4 on our agenda then is the external audit plan for 2020-21. Jim, are you going to take us through this, please?
Thank you, Chair. Evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me all right. So yeah, as the Chair mentioned, I'll be taking you through the annual external audit plan. For the benefit of members who are new to the committee, this is one of our key outputs, and it sets out the scope, timing and our responses as part of the statutory audit for the financial year ended 31st of March 2021. So if you could turn to page number 10 of your agenda packs, or page number 4 of our report, which is titled Introduction and Headlines. This is effectively the executive summary, so I'll take you through this and then I'll touch upon a few other areas in the report and then happy to take questions afterwards. So the top of the report on the right hand side, we outline our significant risks identified. These are broadly consistent with the prior period and relate to management override of controls, which is a non-rebuttable significant risk presumed to be present in all entities. And then the following 2 risks are in relation to the valuation of land and buildings and investment properties and the valuation of the net defined benefit pension fund liability, which are 2 large, highly complex estimates included on the balance sheet of the council. In terms of materiality, members will hopefully be familiar with the concept of materiality and that we perform our audit to this. At the planning stage, we've determined materiality for the council to be 1.1 million, which has been calculated based on roughly 1.85% of the prior year gross expenditure of the authority. That particular benchmark, gross expenditure, being common in the sector for the calculation of materiality. We're also obliged to report any uncorrected misstatements above our threshold, by which we refer to as clearly trivial, and for the purpose of Rugby Borough Council, this has been set at 55k at the planning stage. On receipt of the draft accounts, it's worth noting that we will revisit our materiality thresholds to ensure that these remain appropriate as we go into the final accounts audit. In terms of value for money arrangements at the planning stage, we've identified one area where we believe there's a risk of significant weakness, and that's in regard to the medium-term financial sustainability of the council. The primary reason for us identifying this risk at the planning stage is due to our preliminary review of the medium-term financial plan, and whilst the council has set a balanced budget for the 21-22 financial year, there are, as it stands, unidentified shortfalls and gaps in the medium-term financial plan. It's worth mentioning as well that members are reminded under the new Code of Practice for Value for Money, we won't just report on significant risk areas identified, but we'll provide an annual commentary now on all three criteria areas of the Value for Money Code of Practice. So that's financial sustainability, the 3 E's, and governance. Apologies. So just finally on the introduction and headlines page, our interim and planning visits have taken place earlier this year, and we're due to begin the audit in July through to August, which should hopefully set us up well to report back to this committee with our audit findings in September ahead of the national statutory deadline for publication of local government accounts. Our fees for the audit for this year will be our proposed fees are £63,825, and you can see there compared to prior year that's increased quite significantly. The primary reason for the increase this year is due to the enhanced work that will be required to undertake in line with the NAO's new Value for Money Code of Practice. That does, however, also consider some other revised accounting standards which have been introduced and are effective from this financial year. A full reconciliation and breakdown of the fees are listed at the end of this audit report. I think it's probably worth just mentioning that for the context as well, that the increase in fees are consistent across our client base, and the firm have performed a national exercise in benchmarking fees across all of our local government clients, and this is consistent with other firms in the sector and the findings of the Redmond review on public audit. The following pages of the report just go into a bit more detail around our significant risks and some of the key aspects of our approach and audit procedures to address those risks. I don't propose to go into it in detail, but happy to take any sort of questions on those as they arise. We've previously discussed with the committee the revised accounting estimates auditing standard, which is effective for this year, and there are a few more pages of information included in the report on that. The key change being our work around estimates is significantly enhanced this year, and in particular our understanding of Rugby Borough Council's processes and controls around estimates, and that includes how members of the Audit and Ethics Committee, as those charged with governance, scrutinise and challenge management around estimates. The only other area in the report I'd probably draw members' attention to is our non-audit fees, which are included on page number 18 of the report. We've considered those in the context of our audit and are satisfied that we remain independent as your auditors, as your external auditors. So that was all I was going to say on the audit plan, Chair, but happy to stop there and take any questions that members might have.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any questions for Jim on the external audit plan? No? Okay, John, I was just going to ask John Illingworth, sorry, that we've taken account of the increased fees in the budget, in the
we haven't taken account of it in our budgets because it's been identified post the end of the year end, but we've made adjustments for it in our account, so it'll be picked up for 21-22. Yes, it'll be fine.
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, so we're asked to approve the external audit plan and the fee for 2021. So I'm happy to propose that. Is anyone happy to second that?
No, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, John. So just bear with me. I've got to go back and forwards for my agenda. Okay, so item 5, informing the audit risk assessment for Rugby Borough Council. So Jim, do you lead on this, or is it John?
Happy to lead on this again, Chair. This is our paper, but I suppose the content of it is driven by management. So the purpose of this report really is to facilitate the two-way communication between ourselves as external auditors and members of the Audit and Ethics Committee as those charged with governance. Covers a number of sort of key areas, and it's quite a lengthy report. So areas such as fraud, laws and regulations, litigation and claims, related parties, and accounting estimates, as was mentioned in the audit plan. All we would ask members to do is to consider the responses provided by management and ensure that those are consistent with their understanding of the council, and that if anything didn't chime true, then we could discuss that as a committee. But other than that, Chair, I wouldn't propose to go through the detail of the report any further.
Okay, thank you again, Jim. So I recognise a lot of the statements in there as familiar from ones that we've looked at in previous years. And clearly there are some references in there to the impact of COVID and so on, and particularly some of the fraud issues. So I was content with it and recognised it, but I'll open it up. Has anyone else got any comments or observations on the management representations made? No. Okay, so we are, the committee is asked to confirm that it is satisfied with the arrangements currently in place identified in the report. So again, I'm happy to propose that. Okay. Thank you, Ish. Item 6 is the Treasury Management Report. Is this you, John?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I suppose before I go into the main presentation of the report, just conscious that we've got some new members to the committee, and given that the Treasury Management is quite a technical area, I'm proposing that perhaps before a future meeting, perhaps have a bit of a Treasury Management session with all those involved, and we'll perhaps bring in our Treasury Management Advisors link to support in that conversation as well, if people would be happy for that to take place.
I think that would be really helpful, John, yeah, if we could do that.
So this report is our Treasury Management 2021 annual report, and there are two recommendations within the report. One, to consider the report for 2021, and then to note the Treasury Management indicators as Appendix A. For those of the committee that have those members that have been in the committee for the whole of the 2021 financial year, you'll see this report follows a similar format, and it gives members an update on our Treasury Management activity for the whole financial year. As it's a similar format to previous members, I'll draw out two particular areas. Section 9 of the report is breaches of our Treasury Management strategy. So part of the SITFA Code of Practice, any breaches of our Treasury Management strategy needs to be reported to members with an explanation as to the causes of the breach. There were no breaches for 2021 to report. However, as part of our 21-22 strategy, we decided to set a limit of our cash balances in our operational bank account of £5 million overnight. In previous years, there was no limit on that exposure overnight. So during the year, because of the difficulty and because of the COVID situation, having lots of grant paid to us at quite short notice, we did have a surplus of our cash available in our corporate bank account over in two instances, and it's detailed in 9.3. So on the 1st of April and on the 17th of April, we had over £5 million in our bank account overnight. I'm reporting it to the committee as a breach. However, from my perspective, the risk is relatively low because it's in our corporate bank account, and with other AAA rated bank accounts, we could have 10 million exposed at any one time. So I'm reporting it because it's a breach, but in my opinion, it's a fairly low level issue. And what we've done to prevent this happening again is we've reactivated some money market fund accounts where we can deposit money at quite short notice, which will prevent this happening again. The other area to draw your attention to in the report is section 13, ESG investments. I know following from a question raised at council regarding our ESG investments following our treasury management strategy, what I was planning to do tonight was to bring our treasury management advisors Link to have a debate with us around ESG and our medium term, our treasury management strategy. Due to the fact this is a face-to-face meeting and that Link are based in London, what I'm proposing that we do is once the hybrid way of working takes place, we get Link onto the call via Teams and we can have a more detailed conversation about our ESG on our treasury management strategy. I think I'll open it up now for any questions anyone might have on the report.
Okay, thank you, John. Any questions for John on the Treasury Management Report for 2020-21? Craig, Councillor McQueen, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Not really a question. I wanted to thank John for including the section on ESG investments because it was me who raised it in Council. It's nice to see it's in there. I've got loads of questions around that, but I think they're probably best saved for when the representative from Link is available. So I'll hold my fire on that piece for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Any other questions for John? John, I was just going to ask... Yeah, sorry. Cool.
Just if you've got any questions in advance, it'd be useful if you could send them through to me. And then what we can do, we can make sure we've got a detailed response for you as part of that session.
Okay, thank you, John. John, I was just going to ask, on the two breaches, which I appreciate are in 21-22, not 2021, and the report is all about 2021. But is there so I understand what you said about there was low risk, so we're not going to lose the money, but was there a financial consequence to those breaches? So could we have got more money for it if we'd invested it differently?
No. The reason being that because the investment market, the interest rates are so low at the moment, we actually benefited because the interest rate we had from keeping it in our operational bank account is greater than what we would have been able to get if we had invested it for short term for a couple of nights anyway. So no, it actually benefited us rather than restricted us, to be honest.
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, so we're asked to consider the Treasury Management Report for 2021, and we're asked to note the Treasury Management indicators which were in Appendix A at the end of towards the end of that report. So I'm happy to propose that we go with those items 1 and 2. Is you happy to second it?
Second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 7, Chris, is issue your annual report of internal audit.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. This is to present the annual report of internal audit for the year 2020-21, and that's set out at pages 82 to 116 in your agenda pack. The annual report provides a substantial level of assurance that the Council has an adequate and effective governance, risk and control framework in place designed to meet the Council's objectives. The main report can be found in Appendix A, which covers pages 88 through to 110. The appendix covers the basis for the annual opinion, a summary of the assurance opinions and risk ratings for each assignment, as well as an annual performance summary for the Internal Audit Service and in relation to the implementation of agreed internal audit actions. There are also numerous examples of how the service has added value to the Council over the last year, and a statement in relation to compliance with the public sector internal audit standards and compliance with the Quality Assurance and Improvement Programme, which can be found at Appendix B. In relation to the Quality Assurance and Improvement Programme, there is one compliance exception that I need to bring to the committee's attention, and that relates to terms of reference documentation and review. Early in the pandemic, the government announced grant support payment schemes for businesses, and the council had to act at speed to set up new systems and processes for administering those schemes and providing assurance that payments were accurate and bona fide. The council was under intense external pressure to start processing those grant payments quickly, and as such the Internal Audit Service needed to respond at speed and did so. So whilst discussions took place and there was agreement on the role of internal audit, those discussions were not formally documented at the time. The risks arising from the service not responding in a timely manner, which would have been delayed payments of grants to businesses and or fraudulent payments being made, outweighed any risks around not formally documenting our role as internal audit in advance, and that matter was reported to the Audit and Ethics Committee during the course of 2020-21. Can I also draw the committee's attention to the statement at the bottom of page 85 in the agenda pack, which confirms to the Council that the Internal Audit Service continues to operate objectively and independently. And finally, can I just say it's really pleasing to be able to report satisfactory delivery of the internal audit plan for the last year, despite the challenges posed by the pandemic. And I'd like to place on record my thanks to my team for their hard work and support in delivering that plan. So members are asked to note the report, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Chris on the annual internal audit report? Ish?
Yeah, Chair, back to page 94, and it's probably crops up every time. When you look at, which is page 6 on the appendix, or 94 on the whole block, we look at the audit, sorry, go back to 93, I should say. On it, we said outstanding audit recommendation as March. And when you look at it, it's a sore point again, that health and safety comes up again. I know it says to follow up, and we got 9 overdues. So again, you know, we are back again 6 months later to say we got everything in place, officers in place, and a new system that monitors and a team set up to do all that. And I don't know how, Chris, if you can say, when you say 9 overdue, what stage are we in that process? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If I can just provide an update on that. These overdue actions are reported as stated at the end of March. And as members may be aware, or certainly those members who were previously on the committee, there was a report that was brought to the committee back in January, and you're quite right, Councillor, that that highlighted a number of overdue actions. It reported the areas where progress are being made by the council, and it set out revised timescales for implementation. What we'll be doing as a matter of course for the next committee meeting on the 29th of July is presenting members with an update, and I'll be meeting with the Safety and Resilience Manager over the next couple of weeks in order to establish the very latest position on that. And as previously agreed by the committee, the Deputy Executive Director and the Safety and Resilience Manager will be coming back to a future member of this committee, to a future meeting of this committee, to provide that update and also to take questions from members at the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ish. Any other questions for Chris? Okay. Councillor Watson-Merritt.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I just wanted to ask Chris about that level of staffing for your requirements in the unprecedented season of rollouts of the grants. In the checking of the accuracy and those rollouts and checking to see whether, in fact, the requirements the additional bona fide checks were done, did we need to staff that in any other way, or did the council manage with the level of staffing they had already?
I'm pleased to report that the council was able to staff that internally without recourse to bringing in additional support.
Thank you, Chair. And the second part of that question was, would the council have paid any overtime wages in that instance? Thank you.
The short answer is no. Certainly in relation to officers who work in my team, we have a flexible working system in place, and that helps to manage the peaks and troughs for our staff, and where certainly in my team, where officers have worked additional hours, they've had the ability to take that time back. So we haven't paid any overtime. I don't know whether John has anything to add in relation to any other services.
No, I don't think there is. I think you've covered it, Chris, in your response.
Thank you, Chair. I think that's to be congratulated.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Any other questions, John?
Yes, it's highly reassuring that of the audits undertaken in this period, they're all substantial or high assurance. But it just occurred sort of to me, does it indicate that the way that we assess risks brings out the audits which are naturally the most highly controlled, given that they're the most give the authority the highest exposure, and are we missing something here?
Thank you, John. I don't think that the range of assurance ratings that we've issued this year necessarily indicates that the council has improved necessarily. I think it just happens to be a reflection of the work that we've carried out this year. And if we look back at the last few years, there have usually been a few limited assurance audits that have been carried out. I can categorically say that our programme of work is not focused specifically to the areas where they're likely to lead to higher assurance ratings, and if anything, actually, the programme of work is focused in the opposite way, and the discussions that take place between myself and members of the senior management team are very much about the areas of concern, and the fact that we have that long list of audits, which you'll see momentarily in the internal audit plan presentation for the rest of the coming year. That sets out all the areas which we could potentially review, and also includes information about those areas we have historically looked at and what the results of those reviews were, and details of the areas that we're not looking at in the year ahead and the reasons why. And I think hopefully what that does is provides the committee with a real picture that is building up over a period of time. And when we first put that long list in a few years ago, there was a whole host of areas on that long list which hadn't been reviewed for a long time, and we've gradually been filling in that jigsaw over the course of the last few years, and will continue to do so next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to say thank you to Chris and his team because given the circumstances we've had over the last year and a half, the results of the audit are absolutely fantastic, and being able to complete so many audits in a timely fashion, I think it speaks very highly, particularly when you read through the value for money section of the report. It really shows how effective the audit process is. The question I had was around the internal audit performance indicators. So that's page 10 of the Appendix A. So it looks like we're improving in almost all areas in terms of the way audits delivered, which is, again, fantastic. But I did notice the effectiveness measure, so the implication of actions agreed by officers is down at 74% and has fallen year on year from a high of 93% in 18-19. So is there an issue there, Chris, is my question. Is there an issue with officers implementing the actions?
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for your comments about the service. That's really much appreciated. In terms of the question about implementation of recommendations, I think the first thing to say really is, particularly in relation to the figures for 2020-21, I actually thought they'd be a lot worse this year. And to achieve a figure of 74%, I feel is good performance by the council and reflects the importance that, generally speaking, is taken by managers to implement the actions. I think it's good performance in the context of a pandemic and all of the pressures that services have been under and managers have been under over the course of the last year. Notwithstanding that, 74% isn't 100%, and so we want to do better. And I know that this is something that John is looking to support the team with, and raising a profile of outstanding audit recommendations through the leadership team and the senior management team. The other thing I think I'd say is that the figures obviously speak for themselves, but I think there are vagaries and to do with the figures each year, and it depends exactly what's in there in terms of the actions, and some of the actions may require actually a lot of background work to take place before they can be implemented, and some require significant change, whereas sometimes there might be an action that can be implemented very quickly, and so there are sort of fluctuations there which help to explain the figures. And I think just to finish on that, I know that once, I think it was around a year ago, I presented members with some comparative data from some other authorities, which showed that Rugby Borough Council was doing pretty well in this area, and I'd be happy to do so again and present something at the next meeting. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, if I may, just one follow-up from that. So we've got obviously 26% of actions not implemented within the timescale agreed. Do I assume that they are implemented but late, or are they ongoing issues? What happens with that 26% is my question.
Thank you. So we continue to monitor them, which is the first thing to say. Secondly, they're always reported to the Audit and Ethics Committee so that you have oversight of those, specifically in relation to the high and the medium risks that have been highlighted. The lion's share of that 26% that's been mentioned have already been implemented, so the overall implementation rate is consistently in the 90%. But we do have those ongoing outstanding actions as is mentioned, and I think finally a point to say here is that I think we should rightly focus on the high and the medium priority actions. There are an awful lot of stresses and strains and demands on officers' time, and where actions are rated as low priority, that doesn't fill me with any significant concern. I do get concerned about the high and the medium priority actions, and that's why I regularly report them here to the committee. Thank you.
Chris, can I just ask, following on from that, I've got a few comments of my own, but just following on from Craig's question. So when you're finalising an audit report, do you push on those implementation dates? So and two strands to that. So where someone's trying to prolong something to delay doing it, would you push on that and say, no, this needs to be done sooner? But equally, when someone's saying they'll do something tomorrow, will you push and say, come on, be realistic, you need a few months to do this? So does that dialogue go on?
Yes, Chair, that dialogue absolutely takes place, but I can say it's usually the latter of the two things that occur. There's a natural desire, I think, amongst officers to say that something can be done quickly. So usually the dialogue is, please be realistic with your target setting, because in isolation, an action might be deliverable quite quickly, but in reality there are all sorts of demands on officers' time, and it's important to recognise a process that may have to be followed in some instances. So yeah, to answer your question, yes.
Thank you, Chris, and I think that's fair. So because you're reporting that to us, as you've just described when you answered Craig's question, you know, so we know that people have been given a realistic amount of time to do something. So it's not that you're coming and telling us they haven't done it and really they never had enough time to do it. Okay. Thank you for that. So my other comments, and they echo some of what John and other colleagues have said. So excellent that you've managed to deliver through all the issues over the last year. So that's pretty impressive that you've managed to deliver the audit plan, because I know there are lots of organisations that haven't done that. I think I'm duty bound to mention the positive opinion. So it's really good to see that the positive overall opinion of substantial assurance, and that feeds into that table of the reports that John mentioned on high and substantial assurance. And my third one, I'm trying to read my own handwriting, was about, that reaction to the COVID thing. So getting the team reacting to that, which literally came overnight, didn't it? And the need to put some processes in around that, and the fact that you were able to react to that and give us some assurance that, those payments that went out had some process of checking around them, appropriate checking. Okay, those are my only comments. If you could formally pass on the thanks of the Audit and Ethics Committee to your team, to yourself actually, and your team for delivering that plan, and for keeping us updated through the year on progress, which is obviously culminated in your report tonight. So thank you for that.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're asked to... No other questions for Chris? No? Okay.
Chris, sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, can I just ask Chris, you were asked slightly earlier about the manning, and you managed to get by without any additional help to prepare and do everything that you've mentioned. Did you actually suffer, though, with people being away with COVID or any issues relating to that? In other words, were you actually down on manning rather than above it?
No, basically. The whole team worked remotely throughout the year. Once the pandemic kicked in and there was the instruction to work from home, and quite successfully as well. So it didn't really turn out to be a significant problem for us. And actually what I would say, and it's consistent across the council as a whole, is that we had a drop in sickness absence within the team during the year, and there's been a substantial reduction certainly in short-term sickness absence across the organisation, which has been noted as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Okay, we're asked to consider the report, which we clearly have done, and to note it. So again, I'm happy to propose that. Someone second it. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, thank you. Let's move on then. So internal audit plan for the current year, Chris, 21-22. So I guess this is you again.
It is. Thank you, Chair. So this report sets out the proposed internal audit plan for 2021-22, and that's at pages 117 onwards in your agenda packs. The report seeks approval of the internal audit plan for 2021-22, which has been prepared using the approach previously approved by the committee back in January. As previously reported, the audit planning exercise was delayed this year to April and May, which was due to the pandemic and also the restructure of the leadership team. The audit plan has been circulated to the leadership team for endorsement, and as always, the level of available resources has been prudently assessed, and I'm therefore confident that there are adequate resources in place to deliver this plan. And service resilience is supported with a contract in place for delivery of IT-related audits, and we're also able to commission external support for non-IT audit work where required. Included in is a statement that the plan is presented on the basis of no further significant impacts arising from the pandemic. So that's assuming that we don't suddenly have all of the team off with COVID-19 or that everyone's redeployed to support other services. That's considered very unlikely, but I just wanted to make sure that was mentioned in the report. The draft plan is set out for approval at Appendix A, which is pages 123 to 130, and Appendix B, which is from page 131 onwards, sets out a long list of all the areas which could potentially be audited, the results of previous audits, a risk assessment and the rationale either for including or excluding the audit. Members are free to request amendments to the internal audit plan either today or at any point during the course of the year. And as per previous years, any significant changes will be submitted to approval of the committee. And I'd just say really it's a live process, so whilst it's an annual plan, we are able to respond during the course of a year to emerging risks and concerns, just as we've done in the last year. And we continue review and refine our programme of work to ensure it adds as much value as it possibly can to the organisation, whilst also retaining compliance with the public sector internal audit standards. So members are asked to approve the plan, either with or without amendments, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris on the proposed plan? Ish?
Yeah, just a bit of clarification. Thank you, Chair. In the report, it talks about the total number, Chris, 427 days of internal audit required. And the question was asked earlier whether you got adequate manpower to deal with it. Just for the benefit, I'm just trying to understand, how many of those assignments, would be running in parallel in order to achieve that target? Because you got added up 427. What period are you looking at, that 427? Is it 6 months, 9 months? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's to cover the period up to the end of March 2022. And in terms of number of assignments running in parallel, the way we generally try to work is to keep each member of the team running with at least 2 projects, more likely 2 to 3. Once you get over 3, it gets difficult for the individual to juggle their workload. The reason why we don't generally run with 1 is because the member of staff might hit a stumbling block on a particular assignment and not have a backup plan of work to run with at the same time. So that's pretty standard practice across local government, and it seems to work for us. So, yep, that's what we run with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ish. Any other questions for Chris on the plan? Okay. Chris, I was just going to observation, so the process that you've described that you've gone through to come up with a plan is appropriate, and looking at the long list, the ones that you haven't included in this year's plan, the rationale that you've provided to me looks reasonable and sensible. So Chris is asking us to identify any additional areas of work for the plan, so I think we're saying we don't have any, are we? We're happy to accept Chris's plan as it stands. And in view of that then, we're asked to approve the plan. So again, I'm happy to propose that we approve the plan. Happy to second. John, thank you. Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, just bear with me again. Okay, so item 9 then is the motion to exclude the public under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972. So I'd ask that we consider passing the following resolution: that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of information defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 of Schedule 12A of the Act. Is someone happy to propose that?
I'll second it, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll propose it then and you second it. Thank you. Okay, so could we stop the live stream, please?